Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Julio is a West Texas native and now a desert transplant. Julio is a third-generation Texan, second-generation American, and first-generation college graduate. He obtained a bachelor's degree in psychology from Texas Tech University in Lubbock and has the pleasure of calling El Paso his home. Julio's experience includes working in counseling, workforce training and development, and being an advocate for mental health. He is currently a professional development specialist for the Career Pathways Professional Development Center at Region 6 in Huntsville, Texas. Welcome, Julio. We are glad to have you here.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Julio Medina. I'm a PD specialist, like Krista said, at the CPPD Center in Huntsville, Texas. Also with me is Lupe Schneider. Our objectives for today, first one is identify middle skills jobs. Then we're going to identify what the middle skills gap is. We're going to discuss the need, the development, and the correlation to the Texas AEL content standards, version 3 of the curriculum. And then we're going to talk about how you can participate in the pilot of the curriculum. So on the screen, you see some job titles in the construction industry. We have architects, we have plumbers, pipe fitters and steam fitters, painters, construction and maintenance, electricians, drywall installers, ceiling tile installers, and tapers, construction managers, flooring installers, tile and stone setters, construction and building inspectors. How many of these titles do you think are middle skills jobs? The answer is actually 3. Middle skills jobs on this screen are going to be plumbers, pipe fitters, and steamers, construction and building inspectors, and electricians. Now that you know which ones are the middle skills jobs, other than them all being in the construction industry, what is something that these jobs all have in common? So middle skills jobs are those that require some education and training beyond a high school diploma, but less than a 4-year degree. Okay. In a 2007 paper, America's Forgotten Middle Skills Job Education and Training Requirements in the Next Decade and Beyond, Holzer and Lerman define middle skills jobs as, again, those that require some education and training beyond a high school diploma, but less than a 4-year bachelor's degree. The term middle skills only describes the education necessary for these jobs. Many middle skills jobs are both high demand and high wage. So here are some statistics for the middle skills jobs. So between 1986 and 2006, construction jobs, including those requiring classroom and on-the-job training, grew by 50%. And that's again from that paper from Holzer and Lerman. An occupation gap report for the architecture and construction career cluster from the Texas Labor Analysis website yielded the following results: that there were 74 total occupations in the construction industry, and 42 of those occupations are considered middle skills jobs. So that's data from the website from Texas Labor Analysis. Here's some more data on Texas construction. So as you can see here, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in Texas, construction was $90 billion, or 5.1% of the state's GDP, or gross domestic product, of a $1.8 trillion amount. And in 2019, there were 47,987 construction firms in Texas, and construction employment in Texas in January 2022 total of 75,000, almost 76,000. So that's an increase of 4.1% from January 2021. So we can see that construction jobs, and especially those middle skill jobs, are in high demand. And then in Texas, 4 out of the 5 most numerous construction occupations had a higher median pay than the median for all employees in the state in 2020. So again, they're high demand and some of those are high paying. Middle skills gap. In the chapter, The Middle Skills Gap, from the book Investing in America's Workforce and Improving Outcomes for Workers and Employers, Maurice Jones defines the middle skills gap as the fundamental mismatch between the skills that job seekers have and the skills that employers require for available positions. The middle skills gap describes the difference between the number of Texans with middle skills training compared to the number of middle skill jobs available to the workforce. Approximately 63% of jobs in Texas are classified as middle skills, while only 33% of employed Texans have middle skills training, according to the 2021 annual report by the Texas Workforce Commission. In a paper by the Texas Workforce Commission in 2021, Ending the Middle Skills Gap, TWC was given a specific objective to support activities that increase individuals' opportunities to enter middle skills jobs. This curriculum development was funded under that directive. Here we have some more data and some more stats on a survey that was conducted by AGC, which is the Associated General Contractors of America. And they found that 93% of firms have open positions for craft workers. These results are more widespread than the results from the 2021 survey, when nearly 90% of firms reported having a hard time filling craft positions. And then nearly 3/4 or 71% say available candidates are not qualified to work in the industry due to a lack of skills. In the development of the curriculum, we consulted with construction industry subject matter experts. We looked at curriculum development SMEs and adult education SMEs to ensure that we address current and relevant needs to close the middle skills gap. We were able to obtain data through surveys completed by construction trade instructors and construction industry employers across the state. We were even fortunate enough to speak with construction industry employers regarding their current workforce needs. And then we aligned the curriculum to the Texas AAO Content Standards version 3. It's really important because these standards align with the knowledge, skills, and abilities required for success, high demand, and intermediate level jobs. AAL standards merge employer needs with content-related skills in area of English, math, history, and civics. So the curriculum illustrates how the standards are relevant to work while maintaining the competencies needed to prepare students for educational progress and to transition to post-secondary education or training. This is accomplished by bridging the academic standards to crosswalks that define the specific knowledge, skills, and abilities and detailed work activities required for work, also known as contextualization. So the curriculum consists of 3 modules. The first one that we really looked at was digital literacy in the construction industry. And we wanted to focus on making sure that we touch base on being able to work the electronic devices that are now being used in the construction industry. It can be as simple as an iPhone or a computer or even an electronic measuring tape. After the digital literacy module, we focused on the mathematics in construction because mathematics plays a big role in everything you do in construction, right? As far as making sure you're measuring the materials correctly, ordering the right amount of material. And then the third module we focused on was language arts in the construction industry. Being able to read and write is very important. Again, when you're working with materials, clients, you want to be able to make sure you're understanding and ordering the right amount of material. The curriculum has an instructor workbook and a student workbook. And right now, when we go into the sneak peek of the curriculum, I'll definitely show you what the student view looks like and what the instructor workbook looks like. So there's going to be 2. We wanted to really incorporate the student workbook because we wanted them to be able to keep their workbook. So each student will have their own workbook that they'll be able to keep so they can refer back to when needed. The curriculum should take anywhere from roughly to 40 to 60 hours to complete, really depending on the level of your learner. So if you have more advanced learners, it's going to be a minimum of about 40 hours, really. And then if you have more basic learners, you're going to be looking at 60 hours. And that's really going to be determined on the instructor and again, and on the level of learner that you have to really focus in on what needs to be taught and reviewed. Now we're going to start looking at the curriculum itself. So here is our digital literacy for the construction industry. So this is what module 1 looks like. And this is the instructor workbook version. But I really just wanted to kind of highlight the style of it, eye-catching color, and how much it really just stands out from other curriculums that are out there right now. So now we're going to look at the table of contents for module 1, which again is digital literacy. So our first lesson, the way that we have the curriculum set up is by lessons and activities. So the first lesson that we're looking at in digital literacy is basic computer skills. And then that lesson is then broken up into different activities that touch base on those basic computer skills. So the first activity we're looking at is technology devices. And then we roll into parts of a computer, keys on a keyboard, icons on a desktop, file and storage types, accessibility settings, vocabulary, and then we check your understanding. So I know this may seem basic that we said, wait, but this is for middle skills, but we understand that sometimes you have different types of level learners. So we just want to make sure that all of your students are on the same page. So we'll start off with the most basic components and work our way up. So it really touches on scaffolding, something that we really looked at in AEL and for our learners. And the next lesson is going to be digital literacy overview. So here we're defining digital literacy. We're going to look at your digital footprint. We're going to look at digital citizenship. We're going to learn about digital security, creating a Google account, and then vocabulary for digital literacy. And then again, we check our understanding. So we've touched base on the basic computer skills, and now we're going to touch base on digital literacy. What is digital literacy? Lesson 3 is email. So here we're looking at parts of an email. What is an email composed of? Email safety, right? There's a lot of safety that goes behind opening an email and sending an email. And then we're going to look at composing an email. What is the proper way to compose an email in a professional manner? And also vocabulary, right? There's a lot of vocabulary, especially when you're looking at parts of an email that we want our students to understand. And then we check their understanding again. Our 4th lesson in this module is word processing. Here we're going to look at intro to word processing, exploring Word, exploring documents, exploring templates, emailing a resume, and vocabulary. And then we'll check their understanding. The final lesson in the module is spreadsheets. So the first one is intro to spreadsheets, exploring Excel and exploring sheets, creating a table, and then emailing an inventory list, vocabulary, and checking their understanding. So you have 5 lessons in this module, but each lesson has maybe anywhere from 8 to 6 different activities. So the curriculum is very content heavy and robust, right? We wanted to make sure that the students are engaged and that they are understanding and being able to gain these transferable skills and knowledge. So next is the mathematics for the construction industry module. And this is what the workbook cover looks like for the instructor. I just wanted to highlight the bright style, how it pops, and it's just very modern. So now we'll look at the table of contents for the math portion of it. This one has 3 lessons, but each lesson again has an activity. So the first lesson in this one is everyday math. Everyday math, we're looking at multi-digit addition and subtraction. We're looking at multi-digit multiplication, multi-digit division, assessment, math in the workplace. So here you have an assessment to make sure that they're understanding the math they just did. There's vocabulary and word clues, and then we're checking their understanding to make sure they understood what's happening. Then we're looking at lesson 2. We're looking at fractions and decimals, using models, writing fractions as decimals, converting decimals to fractions, and adding and subtracting decimals and fractions, ratios, rates, and proportions, and then we'll check their understanding. We wanted to make sure that we were touching base on stuff that was relevant to the construction industry, and all of this is stuff that they will use in everyday work life. And then the 3rd lesson, we're looking at measurement. So we've talked about basic measurement, converting measurement, comparing measurements, perimeter, area, volume, vocabulary. I want to just highlight again the scaffolding and the way that it builds on the previous lesson. Each of the modules really do a good job of doing that, keeping to the conceptualization portion that's really relevant for our students. Our last module, module 3, English language arts for the construction industry, is still with the design team. So I don't have the cover for that one yet, but I know it's going to look just as great as the other ones. So I had to improvise, but I do have the table of contents here for you all. Our first lesson is going to be missing inventory. In those lessons, also, there's more activities just like in the previous 2 modules. So you'll have 5 lessons here, and then each of those 5 lessons will have 5 activities. And those activities are to focus on reading and writing. So you'll look at a scenario for missing inventory, and then you'll focus on reading and writing in the first activity. The second activity will focus on oral and written conventions. The 3rd activity will focus on research. And the 4th activity will focus on listening and speaking. And then the 5th activity in that lesson will be checking their understanding. That is applicable to every single lesson in this module. So for lesson 2, we'll look at cost increases, and then we'll look at an activity for reading and writing, oral written conventions, research, listening and speaking, and then check their understanding. So we'll look at lesson 3 again, lesson 4, and then job safety analysis.
What we're looking at is that we have a finalized copy for Module 1 and Module 2. Our Module 3 is with the design team. We're hoping to get that out in the next 3 or 4 weeks. We want to go ahead and get providers across the state who are interested to pilot the curriculum, to provide that feedback, probably a good 6 weeks, so that we can get enough input and guidance to see if we're going in the right direction. Then once we make those adjustments, I'm thinking it'll be in the fall, and then it'll be introduced with a training of trainers so that everyone that implements this or wants to implement this will do the same process of training their teachers and understanding how the content and the curriculum come into play. So we're looking at the fall for the hopefully the launch of it.
Here is the first lesson for digital literacy, and this is from Module 1. So I chose this one. This is an email lesson. Here we have the lesson overview, email, right? We're looking at the lesson again. So each module has, I believe, anywhere from 5 to 6 lessons, and then those lessons are broken up to activities. So this is going to be the big picture that we're focusing on is on email. What I really want to show here is the layout. What I'm showing is the instructor version. This is going to be what the instructor sees. So in the instructor version, you have the instructor directions on the left-hand side, and then you'll have a student view on the right-hand side. So you'll also get to see what the students see in their workbook. So this right-hand side here is going to be the student view, and then your left-hand side is just the instructor view. So students will not be able to see this area, only the instructors will. Okay. Here's where the instructors has the directions. Okay, touches base on what some of the vocabulary is going to be in this section, and then it gives you guiding more instructions on how to start the lesson. The good thing about this is that it allows for a lot of instructor flexibility. The directions here are a template for you to make the lesson relevant to the area you're in, because remember, construction is a very wide area. You're not necessarily going to be just doing construction. You can be in electricity or plumbing, right? So we also touch base here on the AEL standards that are covered in this lesson, and then own elements. These are the occupational skills that are covered. Email is essential to be able to communicate effectively with other team members, including, different members of the team like architects, engineers, or either other construction workers or plumbers or electricians, right? So that's really why we wanted to focus on email as a lesson. Now we're going to look at activity 1 for that lesson. So this is the way that the activities are set up. Everything that I'm previewing today is going to be from the instructor workbook. So you'll see the instructor side and you'll see what the students see. This slide has answers on the student side, but again, the students will not have anything that's in red. They won't have the key. So only the instructors will have the key. So over here, looking at the activity for email 1, it's intro to email and parts of an email. So here has your objective highlighted, what the learner is going to do. We're going to define email communication and identify the parts of an email, right? So again, email is one of the most used communication tools in construction or in the industry, and workers need to be able to write and respond to emails in a professional and effective manner. Not only in the industry, but we're looking for those transferable skills, right, for middle skills jobs. Looking at the instructor portion, you have your procedures. The curriculum does a really good job at giving you options. You may have different level learners. So here in option 1, it is for those learners that you feel like need more assistance, right? And option 2 is for those that require less assistance. So you're able to split it up if you need to. It gives you the flexibility if you have a multi-level classroom to give those options and work with your class. Okay, and then over here, you're looking at student view now. On the right-hand side, and here's what the activity that they'll be working on, right? Labeling the parts of an email. So looking at the recipient, we want to make sure that all our students are on the same page. So some of them may know this already, but some of them, this is their first time to create an email. So if you are in that multi-level class, you can kind of use that to your advantage. And again, I think the curriculum does a really good job of giving the instructor that flexibility. Now we're looking at activity 3. In this activity, now we're going to be composing an email. Here you have your instructor instructions, you have the learner objective, what the learner is supposed to get out of this lesson, and then you have your procedures. Again, you will look at your different options depending on your level of learner. And then here is what the student will be doing. So let's look at this. It says email is a method of exchanging messages between people using electronic devices like computers, tablets, and mobile phones. In this activity, you compose an email using formatting options, an attachment, and a signature. So this is what the activity was about, and it gives them all the examples here. So make sure to use a readable font that looks professional. For Outlook, Arial, and Calibri are commonly used fonts that are acceptable. For Gmail, the default is sans serif. It's fine. The students get to keep their workbook for reference. So I think it does a really good job of making it engaging so that the student, if ever for whatever reason needs to refer to it, they have that available. The following tips will help you remember how to compose a professional email. So this is still in the digital literacy module, which is module 1, but now we're in a different lesson, which is spreadsheets. Here, we're looking at the overview. What is spreadsheet? We're looking at some of the vocabulary that's highlighted. This is what makes a digital literate adult learner. We're looking at the AEL standards. So here we're focusing on reading foundations, content area 1, English language arts, content area 2, English as a second language, and then the ONA elements, right? Here you'll have the objectives. So this side here is going to be the student view, and this is what the student will see. So after this lesson, the student will be able to demonstrate an understanding of spreadsheet terminology. Open, create, save, and share workbooks, edit and format cell contents, insert, resize, and delete rows and columns, sort and filter data, and attach an Excel file to an email. In the previous lesson, we talked about email, composing an email, writing an email. Now we're looking at spreadsheets. And at the end of this lesson, they're going to be able to attach an Excel sheet to an email. So again, we're building on the previous lessons that the students worked on. The reason we chose spreadsheets for construction for a curriculum is that in construction, there's projects that involve multiple tasks, timelines, or budgets. And spreadsheets can be used to manage and organize all of these aspects in one place, making it easier to track and manage budgets and ensure that everything's on schedule. So we just want to make sure that we're touching on the contextualization, how it's relevant to the students' work. Activity 4 is going to be creating a table. So here we're going to have the student create a table. And the previous activities, I'm sure you worked on identifying what is a spreadsheet, what are the parts of a spreadsheet, getting familiar with that. So now we're going to have those students put those skills they used to work. So here we're looking at instructional procedures. The first one, instruction for the instructor, is begin the lesson by reminding the learners about advantages of spreadsheets and highlight the use of spreadsheets in their industry. You'll instruct learners to turn on the computer and model the procedures as you navigate in Microsoft Excel. Move around the classroom and ensure all learners have successfully navigated to Microsoft Excel and have a new workbook open. If necessary, pair up learners to ensure their success. Direct learners to activity 4 and have them select one of their inventory list. Learners should input the data into 3 columns, ask them to format the tables as they wish, but suggest that they bold the column titles and use a border. Have the learners sort the table by quantity from least to greatest, demonstrate how to filter data, highlight the rows containing the column titles, and then as learners complete their data entry and formatting, have them save the workbook document with the relevant title. Refer learners to assessment activity, emailing the inventory list, where they will be emailing the document to the instructor. So I wanted to show this activity because the contextualization, and this is something that may pop up in the students' work. So the activities prior to activity 4 in the lesson, the first activity is intro to spreadsheets, and then activity 2 will be exploring Excel, and then activity 3 is exploring sheets. And then you go into activity 4, which is covering a table. You know, it doesn't just jump into them just making a table for activity 4. We definitely wanted to make sure that we touch every single base, especially because we know that some learners may be already advanced, especially with digital literacy, but some may have no experience in it. So we just want to make sure that the entire class is on the same level. So they give them a list of inventories, because it's not just construction. So you may have a carpenter student, you have plumbing or electrician, but these are just getting them ready for where they're going. You can divvy up the lesson however you feel necessary or feel is best for your students, your type of classroom. But again, that's what I really like about the curriculum, is that it gives the instructor that flexibility to make it work for their classroom, because we know that all classrooms are different. All right, now we're looking at emailing an inventory list. So we're going to be emailing an inventory list. Again, it is building on the skills and knowledge that the students or learners did in the previous activities and lesson. tying it all together, making sure that they're understanding how it all works together and how they're going to be using it in their work life. So for, construction, this could be an example of something that maybe needing to do emailing an inventory list, emailing an order list, or emailing their timesheet if they use that for spreadsheets. So we just want to make sure that they are able to do that. This is the instructor workbook. You're on the left-hand side, you see your instructor directions, the learner objective. And then on the right-hand side, you're seeing what the student will be doing. So for this assessment, you will use the email account you created earlier to write a professional email and attach a spreadsheet you made. So in one of the previous lessons, they also create a Gmail account. All right, now I'm going to jump into module 2, which is mathematics or the construction industry. I wanted to highlight this lesson, which is fractions and decimals. This is going to be your overview of the lesson, again, on your instructor workbook. As the instructor, you will facilitate activities to help learners develop a clear understanding of fractions and decimals and their importance in the workplace. Fractions and decimals are critical skills for ensuring that construction projects are built in the correct specifications and meet safety standards. So we really wanted to touch base on making sure they understood fractions and decimals. Really want to highlight here your AEL standards that are covered. Right, so we're looking at general mathematic processes. So that's sub-area 11. We're looking at numerical representations and relationships and computations. So, and then our ONET elements that are covered in here. So for the student view, this is what the students will see, and they will, after completing this lesson, you will be able to use models and understand benchmark fractions and decimals, convert fractions to decimals, convert decimals to fractions, and use construction scenarios to calculate ratios, rates, and proportions. The style of the lesson is really, colorful, it stands out, and we just wanted to make sure that it grabbed the attention of our learners because we understand that that also helps with the retention of knowledge. Now we're looking at activity 2, the second activity in this lesson. Activity 2 is going to be writing fractions as decimals. It says, now that learners have identified ways in which fractions and decimals are used in the construction industry and solved for equivalent fractions, they will examine how to convert fractions to decimals. So it's, again, building on what they learned in the previous activity. So in this activity, the objective is going to be convert fractions to decimals using division. Okay. Here are instructional procedures. These are, again, for the instructor. This is only for the instructor. The student will not see any of this, but on the right-hand side, this is what the student will see. Here's how to convert a fraction from a decimal. And again, this is something that the student gets to keep for reference. That way they can go back to it and take a look at it if they ever need to. Now we're looking at activity 3, and this is converting decimals to fractions. Now that the learners have learned how to convert fractions to decimals, now they're going to do the opposite, right? Decimals to fractions. So again, the scaffolding, building on what they did on the previous lesson, and the contextualization. Why is this relevant to construction or to the industry, right? Workers need this to read blueprints and drawings. They're often either in fractions or they may need to convert them into decimals. It's very important for workers in this industry to have these skills. And then also when making precise cuts, in some jobs, precision is critical. Carpenters may need to make a cut that's 1/16. They may need to add 2 pieces of wood that have fractions. So they'll need to be able to convert those. Now we're looking at adding and subtracting decimals. So this is activity 4. So you learned how to convert decimals to fractions, fractions to decimals. Now we're looking at adding and subtracting decimals. Why would this be relevant in the construction industry? It may be used for measuring distances. Workers frequently need to measure distances like finding the area or the length of a room, the height of a ceiling, the length of a pipe, or maybe they need to make adjustments. So being able to add and subtract these decimals are going to be very critical for what they need to get done. The student workbook is going to have the math problems, and they won't have anything in red. Again, is a key. Anything in red will not be included in the student workbook unless it is for an example. So this is an example because it tells the student what the steps are, what the process is for adding and subtracting decimals. And then activity 5, and now we're looking at adding and subtracting fractions. So building on what the students learned, what they had practiced in the previous lessons, and making sure that they understand that so they can apply it to this activity. And then at the end of the lesson, you have the check your understanding, where we ensure that the students are actually understanding what they're practicing. We're looking at instructions for the instructors here. the objectives for the activity, and then here is your options, how the instructor can divide the lesson based off their classroom. And I just want to remind everyone that this curriculum cannot be an IET by itself, okay? This is made to supplement, just as the curriculum stands by itself, cannot be considered an IET. I don't know if I said that before, but it can be used to supplement IET programs. Let's go ahead and look at some of the word problems and how they are set up. So this first one is Jason has 2/8 of a pack of wire and Ernie has 4/8 of the same pack. How much of a pack do they have altogether? So this is talking about adding, subtracting fractions. But again, the word problem is relevant to something that may happen on the job site.
So Luby, would you kind of go back and talk about who wrote the curriculum, who you coordinated with, all of that good stuff?
So we had 3 members on our curriculum committee. These 3 members were comprised of individual that is already in higher ed. And what we did was Julio and I actually got to seek some feedback from some construction companies across the state. And then so what we did was bring in that feedback from those construction companies and got together with our curriculum committee. And then we also talked to some individual contractors on what is needed or what they see that the big need is in the construction industry. So obviously this all started in the middle of COVID. And we know, being in education, that we were all kind of propelled into this virtual world. They're no different. The construction area, they saw more dependency on actually going digital also. Everything that is done, whether it's, clocking in, clocking out, all of it is done via apps on phones or via mobile devices. So hence the reason we did our first module in digital literacy. So we actually took that feedback from that. We incorporated into the content. We wanted to give participants or students something that they could actually refer back to. A lot of, like Julio said, a lot of the lessons build on each other. So we wanted to give them a booklet they can keep so they can refer back to them. A lot of times our students that are incumbent workers already in the construction field, they're kind of nervous. They don't want to move up the chain because maybe there are some technology or there are advances in the construction area that they don't want to touch, or they think that they're not confident that they can actually do the work. So that gives them something that they can keep and refer to in the event that they're asked to do something, and then build that confidence, because we want to set them up for success. And I think the way the content in the curriculum is written and how it scaffolds, I think that's something that can be incorporated easily into anything.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.